You're listening to Building the Broncos with Nick Kendell and Carl Dumler, Broncos Country's leading draft and scouting analysts. Head on over to milehighhuddle.com to sound off on all things Broncos.
Well, hello there, Broncos country, and it's once again time for another episode of Building the Broncos. I am your host, as usual, Carl Dumler, and join me, as always, is Mr. Nick Kendell. And we're going to be joined here in just a little bit by Mile High Report's Jeff Essary to talk some Senior Bowl and draft, so we're excited about that. But before that, Nick, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, doing pretty darn well. Can't complain too much. I did just find out that this has been one of the most overcast Januaries ever recorded. We've had one day of sunshine so far in 2020 here in Iowa City, which seems crazy, but I guess every single day has been a little bit dreary outside, but I'll take that over sunny and negative 10 degrees, so that's fine. And, Senior Bowl's come and gone. I always enjoy following it. Hopefully we'll get down there. I know you've been down there before, but really just excited for the Super Bowl to get here and to really get our heels dug in with what is the crux of this show. I mean, the namesake, Building the Broncos. So excited to just get forward here. And, this is, maybe we won't have the adrenaline rush like we did in our last episode with the live stream, but it's good to kind of get back to basics here and have a little bit more flexibility here.
You just talking about overcast. I was listening the other day. They said they figured out, I think the worst time in human history was like around 540 AD. And I guess a volcano erupted in Iceland, causing overcast for like months on end, and ended up killing crops and setting back economies for hundreds of years, led to huge starvation, disease, everything. So hopefully that's not what's happening here. Sorry to put a damper. Wow. Real damper here at the beginning. But no, we got a lot of fun things to talk about, some good things that are that I'm excited just to dig into this Senior Bowl. We haven't had a chance to talk about it too much so far. And Jeff was down there, and just a great guy to really talk some football with. And of course, we got to dig into the Super Bowl a little bit. I guess it is coming up this Sunday. I guess maybe I'll watch it. People keep asking me, what are you doing for the Super Bowl? I don't know. I guess I'll watch it at my parents' house, that kind of thing. So I'm not too excited, but it should be a good game. And we'll kind of dig into that. But make sure you can find us on Twitter. You can find me at Carl Dumler MHH, and of course Nick at Nick Kendell MHH. And you can follow the podcast Twitter account at BTB Football Pod. Make sure you subscribe to our show wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a rating. Also, don't miss out on all of our great off-season content at milehighhuddle.com of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. Also know that our podcast is powered by Overtime Media.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All right, and welcome back to Building the Broncos. I'm Carl, always joined by Nick, and of course we have our special guest today, Jeff, joining us from Mile High Report. And Jeff, we're just excited to hear what you have to say here today, man. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, what is up, gentlemen? Thank you for having me on. I'm looking forward to it.
And I want to say I am sorry that the weather this year in Mobile was not what it should have been, all things considered.
Oh my gosh, it was brutal. I'm a Southern boy, so I'm a wimp when it comes to cold, and I was not prepared. I mean, I came with layers, but I didn't have a hat or gloves, and
oh man,
being out there trying to take notes and everything, and my hands were freezing by the end of each day. So it was brutal, but we soldiered through.
There you go. Yeah, we're a part-time sports podcast and a part-time weather podcast.
Yes.
So Nick always has to give us the rundown of Iowa weather, but. Glad you got to go down there. I just saw a picture, actually, Facebook, with their memories thing, and it brought up our picture from 2 years ago.
That was a great time. The Broncos staff was all down there. A bunch of Broncos writers and bloggers went down there, so it was fun getting to hang out that whole week with you and Sarah. Loved it.
Yeah, me too, man. Definitely have to have a little reunion sometime in the near future for that. But hopefully next year we'll get down there.
Yeah, get both of you guys down here, man. Just make the trek from the Midwest, and we'll do it. We'll have a big party down in Mobile one of these years.
I really need to do that.
Yeah, I keep laughing that Nick and I have been doing this show for like 2.5 years now.
Almost 4, Carl.
Almost 4?
We did the Garrett Bowles draft was our first one together.
Oh my gosh. Okay. And yeah, we still have not met in person. So, but no,
That's
yeah.
the beauty of Twitter and the internet.
It is. This is the life we live now. Our online friends are our real friends. But no, excited to have you, man. Get a chance to talk about this past Senior Bowl. And I did want to get a talk because this was a little bit different for being somebody going down there covering the Broncos, and the last two have really been like all the talk has been about the quarterbacks. When you and I were down there, it was all about Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield. I mean, every question that I had people ask me all the time, what are you seeing out of Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield? Nobody cared about anybody else on the field. And this past year, of course, with Drew Lock, and so, I mean, quarterback has just been the focus with every Senior Bowl. How was it different this time around, knowing quarterback's probably not going to be the pick there at the beginning?
Yeah, it was actually a lot really freeing. First of all, though, I was kind of sad. So I was there in 2018, and then I missed last year, and then we ended up picking Drew Lock and Dalton Reisner, who were big guys at the Senior Bowl, and so had the opportunity. If I would have gone there, I had the opportunity to speak to Drew and all that. Denver ends up taking him, but oh well. And it was ended up being able to go this year, so it was nice not having to focus on the quarterbacks because, like you said, that was kind of the big focus for Denver both the last 2 years, and so you didn't have to really pay. I mean, I paid a little bit of attention to them, but was able to hone in more on the position groups that Denver would be after, and those are the fun ones anyway to watch. The trench drills with the D line and O line, and the wide receiver and DB battles going on, and so not having to pay attention and live tweet each throw and grade the velocity on the ball on these out routes against the air, and so it was kind of freeing.
Yeah, I'm sure, man. I like I said, I remember that was everything that everybody wanted to know, and I remember it seemed like we got into like a Twitter war with a couple people because we kept saying how bad of a week Josh Allen was having, and they're going, "No, it's not what I hear," and I'm going, "He just hit a media person 10 rows up in the stands." It's not a great week.
Yeah, the red zone battles weren't very kind to Josh with some of his accuracy. But again, that's what happens sometimes at the Senior Bowl is people get, especially with quarterbacks. I mean, you guys know for covering the Broncos for as many years as you have, quarterbacks just draws out. I feel like polarization and controversy just at its core, and so people get locked into their guys and end up, arguing about who had a good day and who had a bad day, and excuse bad throws from their guy and really call out the, mediocre throws from the other guy. And that's what was happening with, Baker Mayfield and Josh Allen. Right. I feel like it let up a little bit with Drew Lock. I think pretty much people, agreed he had a pretty good week and liked him from the media perspective and all of the week that he had in Mobile. But I think, this year it was nice to kind of get away from that and just really start each day fresh, not have guys that you're, really high on, and you just be able to kind of go in with fresh eyes and see who impresses you each day.
Right.
No confirmation bias.
Exactly.
I do want to ask you about the quarterbacks before we get really into it. I know you weren't spending as much time there, but obviously the main two attractions would have been Justin Herbert and Jordan Love, two guys the Broncos aren't going to be looking at. Hopefully both of them go before the Broncos pick at 15 to push talent down. Or if maybe one of them slips to 15, the Broncos can get a juicy deal to trade down. But were any of those other quarterbacks there worthy of catching your eye? Maybe somebody the Broncos could look at day 3 that you'd be fine with? I mean, Brett Rippon is obviously an interesting option for the Broncos, but he's not really proven. And there's a reason that he was an undrafted player. Still solid, but maybe not somebody you want to have as your main backup. So did any of the other quarterbacks there really catch your eye?
I think Anthony Gordon was the next tier down. If you look at, from a tiered of Jordan Love and Justin Herbert as kind of the top two, with Herbert being the he was kind of the clear winner from the quarterback perspective, at least in my opinion, that week. And then I think you go down to the next tier, and it'd be Anthony Gordon, who, I thought looked pretty good. He doesn't have a lot. Definitely doesn't have as much physical tools as like a Justin Herbert, but I thought he was accurate, made good decisions with the ball, and he looked pretty good in the actual Senior Bowl game. I was actually surprised to see Justin Herbert, win the MVP, because I thought Anthony Gordon looked pretty good in the game. But that was really the only quarterback that stood out. I thought Montez from Colorado really struggled. Jalen Hurts actually had a tough week. And I'm a fan of Jalen. I love the Sooners. And so have watched what, he's done this last year and watched him at Alabama. But I thought he kind of struggled this week, particularly with his accuracy. And Shea Patterson did not have a good week at all, in my opinion, either. And so I think Anthony Gordon was the only other guy outside of those top two that, would be, I don't want to say draftable, in my opinion, but somebody that Denver would want to look at.
Interesting. I'm a little bit biased and irritated that Nate Stanley wasn't invited. And he's not the best quarterback, but I thought maybe he could be better than Shea Patterson was there. So I'm coming for you, Nagy.
Yeah, it was an interesting one with Shea Patterson.
Yeah.
I think he was clearly maybe the weakest link out, and could have potentially been swapped out by somebody else. And to your point, like Stanley or something.
Yeah, just to reiterate on Shea Patterson, has some tools, was a highly rated recruit, but looking back, he had that really good season with Ole Miss, and people put it on him, but he was throwing it to Dawson Knox, A.J. Brown, Van Jefferson, who ended up transferring to Florida later, and DK Metcalf. So maybe it wasn't so much Patterson as it was the guys around him, especially in college.
There's always got to be that 1 weak link. I remember when we were down there, it was Tanner Lee.
Yeah, he did not have a good week.
This guy, yeah, it was bad. But all right, well, were there any players kind of going into the week that you were really excited to get your eyes on and just kind of see how they would handle either the bump in competition or just getting that live view of them?
Yeah, I had a couple guys that I had my eye on coming in, especially ones that, I thought could be good fits for Denver. And I put a whole piece out of before I went down there, about 10 guys, I think, that I was going to be looking at. But kind of the top ones that I wanted to see was obviously Javon Kinlaw. Everybody wanted to see him, and he was kind of the buzz of the Senior Bowl, especially on that first 2 days. I was really interested to see Christian Fulton, and was sad that he pulled out last minute. And I get it. He's beat up a little bit and had just played the championship game, and so that was kind of tough to see him pull out, because I really wanted to see what he could do. And I thought he had a chance to maybe redeem himself. I mean, it's not like he had a good season, but got picked on a little bit in the Clemson game. And so, had an opportunity to battle against some of these big guys that were down there for the Senior Bowl, big in stature, and that's what kind of gave him trouble a little bit. It felt like against Clemson, and really give him a chance to showcase his physicality a little bit, or, maybe tick that box a little more than he had. But didn't get to see him. So that was one guy I was interested in, and kind of sad that he didn't get to see him. But the other ones I was really wanting to see was Lloyd Cushenberry, and had seen a lot of him from LSU, and obviously he put a lot of great stuff on tape, but to be able to see him live and up close. And then Josh Jones was another one, because one of the good things about the Senior Bowl is giving the smaller school guys an opportunity to kind of make that jump in competition and play against some of the top dudes. And so Josh Jones playing at Houston, he played some good competition, but being able to go against some of the upper echelon pass rushers that they brought into the Senior Bowl. And I say that the D-line talent, I don't think was as stacked this year as it has been in years past. At the Senior Bowl, I feel like the offensive line probably was the stronger group.
That's true for the draft in general this season. Yeah,
for sure. And but he was another one that I wanted to see, how he did in that environment. And so those were, obviously had my eyes on a couple other guys, KJ Hill and a couple of the other corners, but those were the main guys that, I was excited to see, and we're kind of in that upper echelon of prospects that I wanted to take a look at.
Yeah. The guy, I was writing an article on the 10 players I wanted to see at the Senior Bowl, And as I'm writing about him and Jeff Gladney, I read online that he pulls out of the Senior Bowl, and I'm going, are you kidding? I just spent an hour working up all this information, and he pulls out. I was a little disappointed, but it happens.
Yeah, he was another one.
Yeah.
So was Jalen Johnson, and so was Damon Arnett. Yeah,
it should have been a really good cornerback group that was going to be fun to see those battles, and just kind of took a blow. And then, of course, the wide receivers have a great opportunity to go out there and just wow everybody. And so was it that they were that much better?
Fotu, sorry, just thinking too. Fotu from Utah as well. He stayed on the roster and was down there, but he was another one that probably would have given a little bit more of a boost to the defensive line, and ended up I can't remember if he was hurt or just
it was a medical flagged
pulled out. Okay, yeah.
Him and Brandon Ayuk were two.
Yeah. Ayuk was another one that got flagged the day of, and he was, Jim Nagy was
on there.
Yeah, Nagy was talking him up, at the opening press conference, and we were all excited to see him. He was on my list of guys that I wanted to take a look at, and already a stacked wide receiver group. He would have been just another one in there, and I thought could have really helped himself a lot. It would have been a lot of fun to see, but yeah. That was unfortunate too, and I think too. You mentioned Gladney, and with Fulton being out, I think it degraded the cornerback quality as well a little bit. And there were some decent guys out there, but those were the top two corners, and both of them pull out right at the last minute.
Well, speaking of wide receiver, there then, pretty much the talk of the town was Denzel Mims, KJ Hill. Were they as good live as what people are making them out to be, or was it more just because they didn't have great competition going against them, or is it overhyped? How really was it watching them live?
I think Denzel Mims had himself an incredible week, and it's interesting because to me, I don't necessarily see him as a top target for Denver, even though I want it. I'd love to see him. Anytime you add talent to the wide receiver core, you take it. But to me, he wasn't a specific target for Denver just because I feel like he plays a similar game to Cortland Sutton a little bit. But watching him out there, he reminds me of kind of a bit of an Allen Robinson type of guy where, he's creating separation at the top of his stem. He's getting open on those 50-50 balls. And it's not necessarily, he's not a burner. He's not, it's almost one of those where you got to watch closely and don't think he's going to be open, and then he is. And just makes insane plays on the ball all week, and was I thought one of the better receivers out there. I'd love to see what he runs. The Next Gen Stats guys were tracking all the players there, and I didn't see. I don't know if the Senior Bowl publishes the data or anything, but I would have loved to see kind of what they came up with there in terms of top speeds and things like that of how he looked.
Right.
So I'll be interested to see what he runs. But I thought he looked great and really helped himself.
I don't think he is the fastest personally, but what he does is he leverages guys extremely well. So once he wins, once he gets that shoulder or the angle or anything, he can make sure that he has it the whole way to the ball. He'll change his stride, and then once the ball comes, he's not going to get a lot of separation, but he can change the stride, and then when the ball comes, just the perfect length, and use that catch radius to elevate and bring down the ball. So he's definitely a fun one. My comp that I've been kind of settling on with him has been Chris Godwin, who had an incredible year for Tampa Bay this year.
Yeah,
I will say he was a track star in Texas for high school. Yeah. So
I'll put Jalen Rager up against him any day.
Well, yeah, I know. I agree. There's other guys that are faster, but I think he might surprise some people. Just sometimes those bigger guys run faster. Just they don't look like they're running fast, because it looks like they're hardly trying at times. But, I'll be interested to see what he runs. Now, kind of getting to KJ Hill then, he's kind of a different receiver, doesn't have that top-end speed, but has that ability to get open in a hurry, which fits really well with Pat Shurmur. Is that a guy that maybe has moved up your board after watching him live?
Yeah, I was really impressed with KJ Hill. I thought KJ Hill had a great day on really the first and third days. The second day, it wasn't that he was getting beat or anything like that. I had a bad day. He just had a little bit more quiet of a day after the really dominant showing that he put forth on the first day. And then he came back, it felt like resurgent. It had a bit of a resurgence on the third day and really punctuated it and punctuated his entire week with that incredible, I'm sure you guys saw it, one-handed catch that Andrew Mason got the video of. I was standing in the end zone, right outside the end zone next to Andrew, watching practice, and had taken a video clip right before that play and was making some notes. And then that play started, and saw it happen, and this collective just went out from the entire building when KJ reached back and just plucked it out of midair with his hand, and continued in stride. The ball was thrown. I think it was Anthony Gordon that was throwing it, threw it a little bit behind him, and he just took it out of the air with one hand, and continued up the field for a first down. Didn't break stride at all. I looked over at Andrew and I was like, "You got that right?" And he had got it and already tweeted it out. So I'm glad he got the video, because I missed it on my phone. But it was a great play, and I think, for sure the play of the day, maybe the play of the week there. And I think just, punctuated a great week that KJ Hill had. And I thought he and Mims were probably the two of the best receivers there, which is tough to say because there were a couple other guys that had great weeks too. And so, I thought for sure those guys at least deserved to be in the running for the top receivers that week.
Were there any wide receivers that you felt had solid weeks that were limited by the quarterback play?
I think all the guys on the North squad, I say all the guys, but I think the North squad were limited a little bit just from Jordan Love looked pretty good. But there were several plays, especially like in the one-on-ones where, they're deep down the field and they get overthrown, or, miscommunication on some comebacks. I remember, I think Dan Jefferson, not Jefferson was on the other one. Gandy Golden, I think he had one on a comeback where, the ball sailed over his head, and, it's just little stuff like that. But I was saying in one of my notes for one of my recaps that I put out on MHR, that would have been cool to see the South quarterbacks, particularly Justin Herbert, with the North wide receiver group, because I thought the North wide receiver group was just a lot of fun, and had a lot of great talent, and it would have been fun to see those guys together. And so, but I think both wide receiver groups from both teams stood out and did a really good job, despite some shaky throws and stuff here and there.
And what I want to ask about specifically, a guy that I enjoyed his tape. I thought he was limited by quarterback, and I heard some people say that if he was on the other roster, he might have been the talk of the week. Courtney Davis, how did he stand out for you? I know that the hands are inconsistent, but the feet, they say, are sweet.
Yeah, Courtney Davis was another guy. I think he fits a little bit in that KJ Hill bucket, a little bit in terms of his shiftiness, ability to get open, and win early on in the route. Got a little bit of wiggle to him. I thought he looked really good, had some good speed, and he surprised me on the third day when they were really working the red zone drills. And I got one of the videos, and then another one I saw floating around on Twitter. He had two really impressive back of the end zone grabs to the corner pylon, and you don't think of a guy like him as, kind of your red zone threat. He's more of the smaller over the middle type guy, or maybe a little bit more of a down the field threat or an after the catch. But he made some really good plays in the red zone period, and went up and got it with really good coverage too, to the back pylon. I forget who was in coverage on that one, but so he had two big touchdowns on that last day in the red zone period that, I thought capped off a really good week for him. It was tough for all of these guys to stand out because they all had really good weeks, but everybody else was just, showing each other up. And so they kind of get lost in the shuffle. But I thought Courtney Davis did a really good job and had himself a nice week. And probably, like you said, if he was playing with different quarterbacks, or if some of the other guys hadn't had as strong of weeks, he may have been, a one that we were talking about is having, one of the best wide receiver weeks in Mobile.
All right. Well, appreciate all this information. Let's take a quick break here, though, and then I want to get into a little bit of conversation about the trench work, because I know a lot of people have been talking about offensive line or bust in the first round. I know there's a couple guys down there that might have some first-round grades for offensive line. And then, of course, Javon Kinlaw was the talk of the town. I want to get your thoughts on him just a little bit more. But let's take a quick break, and then we'll be back to talk here with Jeff.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All right, and welcome back to Building the Broncos. I'm Carl, joined with Nick, of course, and Jeff from Mile High Report has joined us to tell us about his time down there at the Senior Bowl. I was very disappointed this year. The NFL Network did not air it live, and so we didn't get quite the opportunity to watch it like we have in the past. I know they did it on ESPN2 or something like that, but so yeah, it's good to have somebody that had eyes on the field. And so I wanted to get into the trench warfare. And, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that say this is where football's won. The Super Bowl coming up, you got two great defensive lines. They're going to have opportunities to get after quarterbacks coming up. You got some great offensive tackles in that, of course, on those teams. And so but let's start with the defensive line, because Javon Kinlaw, again, talk of the town, guy that just was destroying everybody. What really stuck out to you when watching Javon Kinlaw?
I think it was really cool to see, first of all, just his size. I mean, the guy is just massive. Seeing him up close, I forget exactly where he checks in. He's like 6'6". I think he checked in at 6'5", but 6'6", 310, 315. The guy just is absolutely humongous in the way he moves and the suddenness that, he's got 84-inch wingspan. And so just, ridiculous athletically, and the way that he was able to move, and seeing him in person with some of the get off and the explosion that he had. I think that was the thing that stood out to me the most, was his suddenness off the line. I think it was one of his first reps. He just absolutely, blew the player across from him up and just blew them backwards right from the snap. And so that was really impressive to see the explosion up close and personal, and you see it on tape too. And that's kind of one of his biggest things, is the explosiveness off the line. I thought he did a good job showing the ability to win with both speed and power. And I think it was unfortunate that he came up a little bit hurt on the second day, and they ended up shutting him down for the rest of the week. And I was surprised they didn't shut him down earlier. Honestly, he came up limping on the day 2 after the one of the first one-on-one period. And it was clear that it was bugging him during the period too, because he just wasn't, didn't look as solid, wasn't winning as many reps. And, I just thought he was having a bit of a down day, and then he comes up limping a little bit, but he stayed in there, credit to him, keep battling through it. He stayed in there through team periods and made a couple good plays, burst into the backfield, on one of the, run drills in team periods, but then they ended up, he continued to limp throughout those. And so I think they shut him down quickly after that. And, fortunately no, serious damage or anything. I think, heard one report of tendonitis, and then it looked like a bit of an ankle. They said tendonitis in the knee, but it looked like an ankle was bothering him too. So I don't know exactly what the final diagnosis was there and why they pulled him out. But what we did see of him, I think, confirmed what you see on tape, and, gets you really excited about the guy. I think he's got some room to grow, and even showed that in Mobile. Once he's stood up a little bit after his first, I don't think he has much of a rush plan. And I think he can, improve in that area and hand usage. And adding some rush moves to his repertoire, not just falling back on like the long arm or trying to power through it. But, all the tools are there, obviously, and he seems like a great kid. And so it was fun to just hear him talk and hear a little bit about his story too, and see him really get after it on the field. And, I think he solidified himself in the top 20 of the draft. I think he'll for sure be a first rounder, and, potentially go in the top 20, top 15, could potentially be there for Denver at 15, if they wanted him. And that would make me a happy camper to see him in orange and blue.
What's the highest you think he goes?
I'm not sure, because you got Derek Brown, that'll probably go in the top 5. And then, I think for me, it's, you got 5, 6, 7 really, I think sets the rest of the draft from there. But I think he could definitely be available at 15 for Denver, or he could be gone at, 9 or 10 potentially, depending on how things shake out with the quarterback situation at 5, 6, and 7.
Interesting. And I do want to ask you about another defensive lineman there. Somebody that the Broncos have been not linked to, but some Bronco fans have been interested in. You mentioned earlier you were a Sooner fan. What was your takeaway of Neville Gallimore?
I thought he looked good. He was one that I had my eye on going into it, and really wanted to see what he could do. I don't know that he projects as well into Denver's defense as a guy like Kinlaw, as he's
That's
more kind of he's more of a penetrator, and he doesn't play as up and down the line. I think he played pretty much the nose and the one tech at Oklahoma, and they used him in less of a stack and shed nose tackle role and more of a gap shooting role. And so I worry about him in that regard. But I think he's got some great ability. He's got some good explosion off the line. His battles with who do I have? I had made some notes on. I think he was the most talented D lineman, in the interior besides Kinlaw. And he was probably one of the top guys on the North squad. But he had some good battles against Josh Jones, and I thought looked really strong. Josh Jones stood him up a couple times, and he had some good battles against Hakeem Adeniji as well. And Adeniji is one of my sleepers. We can dig into him here in a little bit. But Adeniji stood him up a couple times, but he was getting through, and I thought he did a really good job in team periods too. Showed a nose for the ball. So he'd be an interesting one because I think he, has a talent to go, not sure exactly where he would fall in the draft, but I've seen some stuff of him going in the first round potentially. And that doesn't, sound too far off. I don't know about his fit, particularly in Denver though.
Yeah, that's my concern as well. I feel like he's better in a even man front where he can just, pin his ears back and press a single gap. So anybody, you mentioned Josh Jones there, your overall takeaway from him, do you think that he is a guy that, I know he didn't measure the longest, but do you think he can play guard, or is he probably just more a pure tackle year one? And if Denver took him, is he probably pushing bowls / potentially redshirting that first season?
Yeah, I'm not sure on the guard piece. I thought he looked excellent at tackle, and I don't know that I would want to move him out of that.
Me too.
Because he's so good in pass protection. That's kind of his his deal. So it's not like he's a guy that's limited in pass protection, so you would kick him into guard to try to get him, to work in less space or anything like that. And so I think he is more of a pure tackle. And I think he can be, a solid left tackle in the league for a long time. I thought he played really well. He was probably one of the best linemen that I saw there in Mobile. I thought he helped himself a ton. And he was one of those guys that, coming up from Houston that, there's some decent competition there, but being able to play against other, folks that weren't just in the AAC. And I talked to him afterwards, actually, and he said that he hates that stereotype of the small school, no talent not as much talent or whatever around him. He's like, we've got some really good talented players and teams in the AAC. And so I get that, I respect that. And he said he was just happy to come in and compete against anybody, and against all the guys at the Senior Bowl. But I thought he was one of the best linemen there. And I thought he had, some really good reps against Gallimore, and then a guy that really broke out, it felt like, from UNC, Jason Strobridge, had a really good week as well. And Josh Jones handled him pretty nicely, especially in the team periods, I felt like, on the third day. And so he's a guy that to me is a first-round tackle. And, it's an interesting fit in Denver because I don't know if you would want to take him and push him in and try to play him at guard a little out of position while he sat behind and kind of redshirted a little bit, or if you just want to make it a true redshirt season. It feels like if Denver wants him, though, it would either have to be in the first round, or they may have to, sneak back up into the end of the first, or potentially if he drops to the second, since it is a deep class, he could potentially go there. But you feel like after the week he had that he's a first rounder.
I would be surprised if he got out of the top 25.
would you take him at 15? Like, if the Broncos took him, would you be doing a fist pump of excitement or a fist pump of, I want to punch John Elway?
No, I think he's a great tackle, and I think I'm not an OT or bust guy, but I wouldn't be sad to see Denver taking a top tackle. I think it changes things of potentially your plan on the offensive line for this year. That's kind of the thing. You're in a bit of a transition year, and so maybe you do stick him at guard and see what he can do. But I think it's a great move to take a tackle at 15. And that's why, and we've talked about this. I know you guys are big on Tristan Wirfs. And so he's kind of that guy that, gives you the ability to play at guard and then move over to tackle, theoretically. And so that'll be interesting to see how it shakes out with Denver, because I think with the class that you have to consider taking a tackle that can, be an eventual starter for you, because you just can't rely on Garrett Bowles to be the guy after the time that he's had and the such slow development he's shown. Even with Munchak, you could hope for Munchak to work a little magic, but I wouldn't bet on that. And so I think Denver has to come away out of this class with a tackle. And so if that means taking in the top 15 and just taking the hit a little bit this year, where your guy's not going to get as many snaps the first year, but he really turns into something like a franchise cornerstone for you, I think it's worth it to shore up Denver's tackle problems. And you look at the health issues of Juwan James, and if his knee doesn't come back fully healthy, or something else happens, it never hurts to have a top pick at tackle to be able to slide in potentially at the other tackle slot if something happens. And so, even if he came in for a full redshirt year, he could still end up getting starting time and bail Denver out a little bit. So I don't think you can go wrong taking a top tackle at 15.
Are there any of these kind of mid-round, late-round guys like Alex Taylor, Matt Pert? I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. Charlie Heck was another one that was there. Ben Barch. Any of those guys that you're sitting there saying, that's the guy I would pound the table for them to take that flyer and say, this is our developmental piece that we think Munchak can really develop into a high-quality starter?
Yeah, I don't think so on Birch is an interesting one, or Barch, because I think he could potentially convert into guard. He could be one of those guys that is a bit of a, he's a tackle that could come in and play guard, and I don't know if you would even kick him back out to tackle. But I liked Alex Taylor. I mean, he was getting a lot of coaching, and he's a really small school guy that has all the physical tools, but he's going to struggle. I thought he looked a lot better in pass protection than he did in the run game, and was really uncomfortable in the run game. He's going to struggle getting low. 6'9". I think he checked in at 6'8.5". He's got a 36-inch arms and an 88-inch wingspan. So he's massive, and he's got, all the physical ability, and seems like a great guy who was very coachable throughout the week, but I think he's got a long way to go. And so he would be a very, very developmental tackle for Denver. And so if they took him, I don't know that you could count on him being ready within a year. So I don't know how much investment you would want to put into that. And then I thought Pert, he was a little bit disappointing to me. I thought I was expecting a little more out of him throughout the week, and he didn't have a bad week, but Jim Nagy was talking about him and compared him to like a DeBrickshaw Ferguson, and there was some buzz coming in about him, and I thought he just had an okay week. Didn't use his length as well as I thought he could have. And he's a guy with 35-inch arms and 86-inch wingspan, and has a lot of good size. And I thought let rushers get into him too much. He mistimed his punch several times with some of the edge rushers, and so still I don't think has the control and the hand usage that you want to see in pass protection at the tackle slot. And so he would be a developmental guy. I don't know that I'd pound the table for him, but those are some of the other tackles. I don't think any of the other guys really stuck out to me as somebody that I would want to prioritize or go after. One of the tackles that I would want to go after or prioritize is one who is actually playing guard, and that's Adeniji. I mentioned him earlier, and I thought he had he was one of my sleepers coming out of the Senior Bowl. I didn't really hadn't studied him a ton, or he wasn't really on my radar. And they kicked him over. He played left tackle at Kansas for I think his entire career at Kansas. And I talked to him after one of the practices. He said he hadn't played guard since high school, and they asked him to come over and play guard during the Senior Bowl, and because he said that's what a lot of the teams, the NFL teams that were looking at him are wanting him to project over as. And I thought he looked excellent at the guard slot for as rusty as he is coming off. So he had a little bit, I think he struggled a little bit to get in a bit of a rhythm after that first day, but the second and third days, he looked really good, really comfortable in pass protection. Obviously you can see the kind of tackle roots taking hold there, but strong in the run game. And I think he's a guy that could be the Dalton Reisner esque guy, from that Kansas area, tackle converting over to guard at the next level. And can be a really solid pick for Denver in the middle of the rounds. And so I really like Adeniji and think he really helped himself as well, because you did get to see him a little bit translate into that guard slot, so you don't have that question mark as much since he just played tackle in college.
Yeah, I left his name off the list just because I didn't want to come across as a homer for KU. But no, yeah, I've heard a lot of good things being from Kansas. I've heard really good things about his character and just the kind of person that he is, and also putting out some pretty good tape being on a bad team. They went out this year and actually surprised a little bit, actually, with a few wins. But yeah, I wouldn't mind him definitely being a Denver Bronco in the near future. But let's kind of transition here a little bit, just because we're getting long as usual. And look at a couple other positions. Is there an off-ball linebacker that maybe kind of stuck out to you of, hey, this would be a nice guy for the Broncos to go after?
Yeah, I thought, everybody was talking about the kid from Michigan, Josh Uch. I didn't see him a ton, but from what I did see of him, I liked and thought he looked good. I thought Zach Bond from Wisconsin did a really good job. He's an outside linebacker that that was playing inside for the Senior Bowl. I thought he looked really good. It's kind of tough for the backers to showcase. They do some of the run drills and stuff, but they're not really. You can kind of see the guys who have a nose for the ball and exploding downhill and that kind of stuff. But it's harder, I think, to see in, with the one-on-one drills, especially when some of these guys are isolated against a tight end. It's really a tough drill for them. But I thought Akeem Davis-Gaither as well on the South team, he had a good week. And he's kind of a tweener guy. He's 6'1.5" and 220. And so he's kind of that big safety linebacker guy. He's kind of the modern day, NFL linebacker, like a Dan Buchanan or something like that. And so I thought he had a really good week. And so those were some of the guys that stuck out to me from an off-ball linebacker perspective.
And a little pet player of mine that I've been a fan of this entire season that I thought had a pretty good week, and I just had him in my mock draft that was dropped today. Terrell Burgess, safety / nickelback out of Utah, a guy who, Will Parks might be heading out here, and Kareem Jackson, good player, but definitely, could be gone after next season. What were your thoughts on Terrell Burgess? Because I've been really impressed with him, and I've thought pretty constantly all season that this is a guy who I would love in the Vic Fangio defense.
Yeah, and that's a great call of him, plugging in for Will Parks, because that's kind of where he, excelled, was just moving around everywhere at the Senior Bowl. They played him at nickel. They played him at deep safety. They played him on the outside a couple times. And I thought he had a really good week. He was a guy that Benjamin Albright was really high on as well. And so we were chatting about him and watching him together a couple times with he and Ryan Edwards. And so thought he had a really good week, and he is a guy I think that would fit, like you said, really well in the Fangio defense. It was he struggled a little bit, I think, on the outside. He's not going to be a guy that's going to line up directly at corner, but I think you put him in that Will Parks kind of nickel role,
Well, awesome. Good to hear about Terrell Burgess because I've really liked his play this season. He was kind of more of a safety or a special team / backup going into the season, but I really have enjoyed his play throughout the season, and the Broncos could get him round 3, round 4 if they don't bring back Will Parks. Heck, even if they do bring back Will Parks, I would be a big fan of Burgess.
Yeah, I think he really showcased his versatility in Mobile. And another guy who's kind of a versatile guy, played well in the box safety role was kid from Notre Dame, Alohi Gilman. He got hurt on, I think, the second day, and so we missed a bit of the practice. But I thought he was really impressive. Really, both the kids from Notre Dame. Troy Pride, I thought, had a really good week at corner as well. He and Gilman was a guy who really wasn't on my radar. I was watching for Troy Pride, and he played as well as expected. But Gilman kind of stuck out to me as another safety that played really well in the box. I thought he matched up well against tight ends, had some good ball skills. I think he made a couple plays, got some PBUs in the one-on-one drills, and so he was impressive to me as well. All
right. One final question from me. If there is one player that you are going into that war room and pounding the table for from this Senior Bowl, who's that going to be? It doesn't have to be first-round guy, just somebody that just really, this is my guy. This is who we got to go get.
Well, I'll give him to you because I think we missed him. I didn't even get a chance to talk about him because we were covering so many other players on the line. And Lloyd Cushenberry, man, he had such a great week and was so impressive. And even just talking to him, I got a chance to chat with him during the media days. And just, one of the things specifically since he played center was just curious to know from him what his responsibility was in the offense. And he talked about, for really the last 3 years, he was like, it's kind of been, I've been the show in terms of making the calls, calling out protections. Even this last year working with Joe Burrow, he said, I was the guy who got the line set and everything and made all the protection calls. And then Joe had the chance to override me, or if he saw a safety rotate late or something like that. So they were in good communication from that perspective, but it all started with him. And so, he's really been the, kind of the captain of that line and the orchestrator of the offensive line at LSU for the last 3 years. And so, he's a smart guy, and I think that translates, and his experience doing that translates really well into the NFL. And then he brings all the physical things to the table too. And I really liked what the Bengals did for the South team is, they were drilling a lot of zone concepts because, that's what the Bengals do with the McVay spinoff offense. And so he looked, we had a chance to see him in some of those, reach blocks where you're reaching a 3-tech and some of the zone combo blocks and stuff in the drills. And he just looked, super smooth in pass protection. He was a rock. He took on Kinlaw a couple times and stood him up. Those were some really good battles before Kinlaw got hurt, watching Kinlaw and Cushenberry go after it. And so to me, outside of Josh Jones, I felt like Cushenberry probably had the best week of any offensive lineman there. And, he's one of those guys that the old scouting term, he has sand in his pants. I mean, he just got low and absolutely was, great at active hands, able to reset against the bull rush and interior pressure. And so to me, he's a guy that if you don't sign Connor McGovern, or maybe even if you do, I think Denver goes out and gets him potentially in the second round, and he'd be a guy that I would really, want to see in Denver's offense.
Yeah, no, that's great. I heard lots and lots of good things about him. All right, well, we're obviously, like I said, we're getting long. So we really appreciate you coming on, Jeff, and giving us all this great information about your time down there. And always a pleasure to get to talk football with you, man. Really, again, just appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely. Had a blast. I appreciate what you guys do and all the great content that you guys are constantly churning out. I don't know if you guys sleep or not, but y'all are putting out some great stuff. And so appreciate all the work y'all do. And it's a fun, draft season. This is kind of our Super Bowl for the Broncos this year since we're not in it. So let's enjoy it.
And one more thing before you get out of here, score prediction for the Super Bowl.
Oh gosh,
I know.
I don't have any clue because I feel like it's such an evenly matched, and to me, it's one of the better matchups that we've had in the Super Bowl over the last couple years. So I'll go. I hate to go with the Chiefs, but I think the superior quarterback wins out in the end. I'll go Chiefs 34-28.
All right, and I won't spoil it for the listeners what Carl and I predict because that'll be later in the show. But thanks for coming on, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All right, we want to thank Jeff for coming on and joining us to talk some Senior Bowl and draft. Make sure you're following him on Twitter. He's definitely one that is worth following. You can find him at Jeffrey Essary. And if you need to know how to spell that, it's JEFFREYESSARY. There you go. So great follow. I always love what he brings, and he always has some of the best breakdowns of film. I love what he does. But all right, let's get into some Super Bowl talk and about how the 49ers, I know, I really wish. The 49ers hopefully are going to be crushing the Chiefs here this Sunday. And I keep seeing all these maps that say like which states are cheering for which team. And like I can understand our states cheering for the Chiefs. There's a lot of Chiefs fans in our area, but Colorado, whoever did those maps, they need to be fired because there's no way that Colorado, the majority of them are cheering for the Chiefs.
Yeah, and this is kind of a weird thing where I've been trying to get to the heart of why some fans are saying they're going to cheer for the Chiefs, and it's the, why wouldn't you cheer for your own division thing? And I can kind of get behind that when rankings matter behind like college sports. When I'll cheer for my conference. But when it's kind of more of the true level playing field of professional sports, where it's more of a zero-sum game, I think that you need to cheer against your division rivals. Now, but if it came to like the Chargers are playing in the Super Bowl, I really wouldn't care. Like their fan base is, maybe I just call it a fan. That is unless Tom Brady goes there. Who knows what's going to happen there. But like the Chiefs, the Raiders, the Patriots, and for me, probably the Bears just because of proximity. And maybe because the Packers, too, because my sister and her now fiance are Packer fans. I don't need them gloated. I'm supposed to be the football guy here. I don't need you to have any joy when it comes to that. But I'm such a great, nice family member. But I think it comes from more of a college football perspective where pretty much every team, maybe besides Nebraska, I cheer for in the Big Ten in their bowl games or any sort of non-conference matchups. But I just can't get behind that in professional sports. I don't know what it is. I think that's crazy. That's bananas to cheer for the Chiefs or any team that's in your own division.
Well, and really, there's like one very, very small reason to cheer for the Chiefs. And that would be that they'd have the 32nd pick instead of the 31st pick. But by that point in the draft, it really doesn't matter. It's a pretty big guessing game once you get into a lot of those 20s, 30s picks. And so, yeah, for me, that's not enough reason to make me want to cheer for the Chiefs. And of course, I mean, I'm surrounded by Chiefs fans being in Kansas. Yeah, I don't need them for a year telling me how their team won the Super Bowl. That would be misery. I lived in Seattle when they were starting to look really good. And I remember how many Seahawks fans would come up to me. Hey, did you see the game? Of course I saw the game, you idiot. I did not. Just always made me angry. And whenever the Broncos lost, of course, they had to come tell me. And I've told the story of when the Broncos lost to the Ravens. And of course, I was working, and all of my coworkers like came and surrounded my register. I was working at Target at that time, and we're like, "Hey, guess what happened?" Like, don't ruin my day. And then the Seahawks lost the next day, and I'm the only person smiling at work that day. So anyway, back to this game. Yeah, definitely cheering for the 49ers. And this should be a really, I mean, it's an impressive game of the talent that's in this game. You got two teams that have multiple ways that they can beat you. Both of them have defenses that are playing just lights out. And so just very, very excited. You got two of the best offensive minds in football, and Andy Reid and of course Shanahan on the other side. Going to be a lot of fun. And got some of your Iowa boys playing in this game as well.
Yeah.
I saw Kittle was talking about how he was bullied by
Anthony Hitchens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can't wait to get out there and put a few hits on the guy.
Yeah, Hitchens was a huge signing for the Chiefs 2 seasons ago, but really disappointed his first year. He's played a little better this season with the Spagnuolo scheme, but I don't know, man. The speed and the edge blocking that the 49ers have, it's going to be an interesting matchup, and I wouldn't be surprised if Kittle gets a few good licks in on Hitchens.
He's going to have his chances, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And that's going to be an interesting matchup to see what he can do. So let's kind of dig into this a little bit. Let's just start with looking at the advantages that each team has. Let's start with the offensive side. Where do the Chiefs have the biggest advantage in this game over the 49ers on their defense?
The Chiefs' biggest advantage over the 49ers is, man, that's a good question. I think that the biggest advantage that the Chiefs' defense will have is probably the fact that they can play a little bit more loose, because they don't have to hold the 49ers to 20 points. It's not like the Broncos or the past few seasons where if a team gets above, say, 21, game's probably frickin' over. The Chiefs can play a little bit more loose, pin their ears back, be more aggressive, get turnovers, and just because that offense on the other side of the ball is capable of putting up 50 points. I mean, they've just been an absolute juggernaut this offseason. Not the offseason, this postseason, all season, really. And it's not just Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in football right now, but it's the scheme as well. Andy Reid's doing a phenomenal job dialing up the offense, getting guys into space, and they just have so many weapons. The offensive line is okay. I don't think it's overly talented, but when you have the track speed that they have on the outside, it's, they're going to put up points. So that's probably the biggest advantage is the defense, is that they have a juggernaut offense.
Yeah, I saw something. Sal Palantonio highlighted that I think it was 69% of red zone snaps. The Chiefs are doing some kind of motion or shift that makes defenses have to worry about every single offensive player. Even if they're doing a run play, you still have to worry about Tyreek Hill coming across the formation and whether he's going to get the handoff or not. And so you can't just pin your ears back and go after one guy. You have to be very, very disciplined in what you're doing. And this is, both these teams bring some very, very dynamic offenses and defenses, what they can do. I do think that I think the 49ers have the better offensive line in this game. But if I'm looking at the Chiefs, the one place I do feel like they can do a few things, obviously Chris Jones. I mean, he's going to be a matchup nightmare against pretty much any team. There's not many people that can handle him one-on-one. There's maybe 2 or 3 guards in the NFL right now that can maybe make that kind of claim. And the 49ers, well, again, their offensive line is pretty good. It's not best in the NFL. And so I do think that Chris Jones, if there's a player that can really make the 49ers make some mistakes, he's going to be the guy that's getting in the backfield, making them do something that they don't want to do.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, you just can't ignore him, the speed that he has. And I mean, let's not even sleep on Damian Williams. I know the Chiefs don't really like to run the ball, but Damian Williams has some real giddy up to him. And whether it be, just quick passing game, if they can get that guy the ball in space, he could be gone in a hurry. So it's just so much speed. I know he totally shifted to the Chiefs offense here. The question was the big advantage they'd have on defense. But yeah, I guess the biggest advantage for me on paper would be Frank Clark going up against Mike McGlinchey. I think that Mike McGlinchey, drafted 10th overall in 2018 by the 49ers out of Notre Dame, and he's a solid player, pretty good technically, but I think he's a much better run blocker than he is a pass blocker. And with how the 49ers have been able to control the pace of the game with obviously the run game, that he hasn't been as exposed. If you want to see anybody get beat on like a drum, though, the first half of that 49ers versus Vikings game, Danielle Hunter of the Vikings, the edge rusher, absolutely just destroyed Mike McGlinchey in the pass game. It was embarrassing, honestly. It was horrible. Now, granted, Danielle Hunter is incredible, but I worry about that if the 49ers can't control the pace of the game and McGlinchey has to go up against Frank Clark and pass rushing reps where it's, 3rd and long or the 49ers are having to play a little bit of catch up, then that could be a matchup that concerned me a little bit.
I did have to laugh. Did you see Frank Clark tweet out something about
it was at his press conference.
Oh, was that okay? About they've never seen somebody quite like me.
Yeah, that's
everybody's like, you played for the Seahawks for the first 4 years of your career.
Yeah, you know,
come on, buddy.
Frank Clark is. I'm not the biggest fan. You know, at Michigan, he had a lot of issues as well. That's why he came out early and fell to the second round despite being a first round talent. And every time that dude opens his mouth, he's probably one of those ones you live with it if he's on your team, but being a rival fan base, you know, just like, dude, shut the heck up. I know he's doing the talking on the field as well. He's backing it up. He's a really good player. I wrote about him, I think, before the Broncos matchup with the Chiefs week 1 this season. Yep. I wrote about him last year when the Broncos played the Seahawks, because I thought he was a really talented player. But, man, think the Chiefs are lucky that they have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and a fun offense, because Tyreek Hill and Frank Clark, trash. I can't stand them. Yeah,
they would be hard to justify as a fan that you cheer for them. And it's kind of one of those, you got to go to the old saying of, I cheer for the logo on the helmet, not the name on the back.
Yeah, and I know we can come off a little bit hypocritical here because Alexander Johnson does have a background with an issue as well. But listening to Alexander talk, I don't know, he just comes off as a much more likable person. So, I mean, when he does that saber-toothed tiger dinosaur thing and just being a goof, like, a lot of fun, positive energy there. Just, the other two, no thanks.
Right. Well, and it's one of those, like, I mean, we talked about this a little bit with Kobe, if he was a redemption story, if he made mistakes. And I mean, if people want to crucify somebody for their worst mistake in their life, go for it. But you better be ready for what's going to come back at you, kind of thing. I wouldn't want people to judge me just based on my worst thing that I've done in my life. I'm not going to say it here on air, but no, I mean, it is. It's kind of, you see some of these guys that redeem their careers and really start working to become a better person. And, you know, I look at like Von Miller. There for a little bit, it was hard to want to cheer for him. Bribing a tester to not have his urine tested, all those kind of things. It was kind of like, oh, come on, man. But he has worked his tail off to get his life right. We talked about it on here. DeMarcus Ware saved that guy's career. And you think about what Aldon Smith with the 49ers, if he had a guy like DeMarcus Ware to work with, how different would his career be? For Von Miller, he's become a huge person within the community of wanting to go out there, help people. I know his charity with helping with glasses for kids that can't afford glasses. I mean, that's huge. It's great to see all the things that he's doing. I don't see that in Tyreek Hill. I don't see that in Frank Clark. I see two guys that you're just like, just please stop talking. And just, I mean, it's almost like they want to blame everybody else for their mistakes and never own up to, hey, I did something wrong.
Yeah, this is turning into a We Hate the Chiefs podcast.
I know, it is. I know. Sorry, I know. It's hard not to. Like, I just don't want the Chiefs to win.
Yeah.
And, but they are a really good team. I mean, they have some great matchups. I will say the matchup that I'm really looking forward to, we can maybe talk about this, a matchup that we just is the key to the game, is I think the linebackers for the 49ers against Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
They are one of the few teams that can actually have linebackers who, not the entire game, but they can kind of keep up. They can slow that down a little bit compared to a lot of teams that the Chiefs have for sure have played so far.
Okay, I'll counter your key to the game there for the 49ers defense. I think it's the ability to generate pressure without needing to blitz. I think that they can get home with four guys pretty consistently. They have a rotation of guys up front. And not only can they get home with keeping guys in the backfield and coverage, but they can also contain while collapsing the pocket. So if you do that and then maybe play a shallow zone, maybe even a spy with one of those speedy linebackers, Quan Alexander specifically, you can really neutralize some of those broken play opportunities that the Chiefs seem to thrive on.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right that they're going to have to, that front defensive line is going to have to win the entire game.
Mm-hmm. They have to because the back seven, it's not the back seven, but the defensive backs they don't think are talented enough. They can be covered up a little bit with obviously the talent of the front seven, But outside of Richard Sherman, I just don't think that this is a very talented and deep defensive backfield. So that front seven is going to have to win rather consistently. And the Chiefs do a great job of beating the cover three. I mean, you got Mahomes with the arm to pretty much make any throw that can beat that. They can flood one side of the field to really stress those zones. And they have the speed and the differing weapons, Mecole Hardman, Demarcus Robinson, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Damian Robinson, where if you're not getting home quickly, those longer flood concepts, etc., developing routes can, to have the time to develop. So I worry about if it comes down to the talent in the 49ers defensive backfield, this game might get ugly.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you. That is where their biggest weakness. I mean, we were talking about their roster not too long ago, breaking down what's the difference between the 49ers and the Broncos. And that is one area where I do think the Broncos aren't that far behind when you're talking about the secondary. I know that they don't have a great secondary right now, but neither do the 49ers. And, but then, then for the Chiefs, what's the key matchup for them winning then? But no, you're right. The 49ers defense, the weakness really is that secondary. Jimmy Ward's okay. Richard Sherman's obviously playing at a very, very high level at this point in his career with his injuries and stuff like that. But beyond those two, not really a whole lot of great players. I mean, they're talking about benching Witherspoon after this past game. And so, yeah, that's going to be a place that the Chiefs can really take advantage of. And they've been covered up a little bit by that front, those defensive players getting after the quarterback. I mean, that is one of the best groups in all of football. And there's a reason that there's so many now kind of making some ties to the Broncos with Eric Armstead being a guy that could come in and help out our defensive line, that kind of thing. But no, I guess then what do you see then for the Chiefs? What is going to be their key matchup to be able to win this game?
The key matchup for the Chiefs is if their defense can do enough to get off the field and get the ball back for their offense. I'm really curious to see, the 49ers, people want to talk about how beautiful the pass game is with Andy Reid and everything, but I've been just in awe of Kyle Shanahan's running scheme the entire postseason, all season, to be completely honest. They don't have the best interior offensive line, but they have probably the best fullback and I would say the best tight end in Juszczyk and obviously George Kittle. And if the Chiefs can get off the field instead of the 49ers just completely leaning on them and, really extending drives and just that physical style of football where it can really, just take the air out of the clock, take the air out of the ball and take the time off the clock. That's the biggest thing for me. So I'm going to be really curious there. I do like the Chiefs' defensive line talent. I think that's probably one of the better areas of their defense. I loved their safety duo before Juan Thornhill was injured, lost for the season with an ACL injury. But specifically the outside zone, I don't know if the Chiefs have the linebacker talent that can fill and get to the spot that they're going to need to and read it well enough as well with the obviously the pre-snap motions and the like that the 49ers like to use, that they can get off the field as consistently. So it's going to be an interesting game. And I really two interesting styles here going head to head. I actually just found something ESPN Stats and Info just tweeted it not too long ago. The Chiefs have gone with a pass play 61.4% of the time this season, including the playoffs. The only teams with a higher percentage prior to playing in the Super Bowl were the 2008 Cardinals, 63.1, and the 2009 Colts, 62.8. Both those teams ended up losing in the Super Bowl. So it'll be interesting. It's just both these teams, beautiful offenses, West Coast variants, disciples from Bill Walsh, but one of them believes that you pass it all the time. The other one running it. And the thing I love about the 49ers is also the fact that they're running it, which is, that's fine. I'm more of a pass guy, but their pass plays are almost always explosive pass plays as well. So it's going to be really interesting to watch this matchup.
Yeah, I saw somebody right after the 49ers made it to the Super Bowl that was like, they were running so much to try to cover up for Jimmy G. And a lot of people got after him. They're like, no, they're running it because it's successful. I mean, if you're picking up 15 yards per rush, yeah, you keep with that. Like, why would you go away from what's working? Make them stop what's working and then go to the next thing. People get way too complicate. I don't know. They want to complicate the game when sometimes it is just as simple as, hey, if this is working, keep doing it. I remember the Broncos. There was times that they went back in Shanahan. They would call the same run play. They just switch which side they'd go to, and they just keep calling it over and over again if it was working. And it's just kind of like, well, yeah, why? Why would you stop it?
Something that Shermer does too.
Yeah, exactly. And so, it's going to be complete opposite views on some of the things that they're doing on offense. I mean, you got the most high-powered passing attack in the game, most high-powered run attack in the game, two defensive lines that are loaded with talent up and down. You got some other playmakers in the secondary, some big names, the Honey Badger, Richard Sherman. So just lots and lots of storylines that go with this one. But I guess let's get to our predictions here.
We should go over these stats first, though. I know we're getting long, but they're way too interesting not to do it. So at Sharp Football, Warren Sharp collects a lot of analytical data and presents it. He's probably one of my go-tos as far as advanced statistics. And he tweeted out a few interesting tidbits here that I thought were worth sharing here. So tweet number 1, no passing offense in the last 4 years has produced explosive gains at a higher rate than the 49ers at 13%. So that's, they're not passing it often, but when they do pass it, it goes for a big play, which I think is really unique. Obviously, the play action and the threat of the run is a huge reason for that. So that's really interesting to note. And another one is that the second tweet he has here is that the 49ers run the most pre-snap motion in the NFL. So I love that. That's probably one of my, next to play action, pre-snap motion is probably the thing that gets my heart palpitating the most as far as schematic stuff. Just use it more. Use it all the time. Why not do it every single play? I don't get it. But the Chiefs rank dead last, number 32 in the NFL in run defense when offenses use pre-snap motion. So that is, talk about an interesting tidbit there. That really, again, we're talking about how I'm just not impressed with the linebackers of Kansas City. I know that's kind of a shot to my Iowa Hawkeye heart because Anthony Hitchens is a Hawkeye and backup linebacker Ben Neiman is a Hawkeye, but it's true. And the fact that the 49ers run the most pre-snap motion, the Chiefs are the worst against the run with pre-snap motion is, gosh, that's just such a weird, interesting factoid that I thought was worth highlighting.
No, I appreciate it. That is, those are the little details that really begin to tell the story of how this game's going to go. And again, the 49ers, you can bet that they're going to have this game be where they're going to dare the Chiefs to stop the run game. And then they're going to run some bootleg, some play action for the pass game kind of thing. But they're pretty much going to say, stop our run game, make us have to go to the pass. It's not that they don't believe in Jimmy G, because he's actually had a pretty good season this year. But it's just more, the run game's been working so well. The Chiefs struggle against the run. So why not try to attack them at their weakest point? And for, like you said, with the Chiefs attacking the 49ers, they're going to run those flood concepts at that cover 3 and make one guy have to try to cover 3 different guys. Well, you can't do that. And they're going to pretty much say, we're going to hope that Mahomes can dance around, that the offensive line can hold up a little bit, and we can get those explosive plays. Because, the Chiefs have already shown you can get up with a 14-point lead, but that doesn't mean much against the Chiefs.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. And this last one, the Chiefs are difficult, is because they featured motion or shifts on 69% of the red zone snaps, something that the Broncos did as well this season. Well, obviously, a couple of the Drew Lock touchdowns came with those pre-snap motions, which is, for the Chiefs, using it 69% of the time. Nice. The most in the past 10 seasons. So they kind of get you on your heels, make you just a tick slow in your mental processor because you have to kind of read what's going on and then get after it. So, man. Yeah.
And that last one there, I saw somebody on Twitter ask, well, then why don't more teams do this? Well, there's no team in the league that has a Tyreek Hill that makes teams have to fear him getting the ball. You have to have the players to make teams respect it. And there's just not many teams out there that would have players to respect. The Broncos, you don't fear them handing off to Tim Patrick or Deshaun Hamilton. I'm sorry, that's not going to scare me one bit. Even Cortland Sutton, he's not the fastest guy. I'm not worried about him getting a handoff and being able to take it for an 80-yard touchdown. I know this is talking about red zone, but even there, taking it for a touchdown. So, there's a lot of things, and even there where he can do some RPO kind of stuff. This is why we keep highlighting why the Broncos need to add speed to their offense, because then they can start running these kind of concepts. They can start making teams have to respect every offensive player on the field. And that's exactly what the Chiefs do. It's exactly what the 49ers do. Every player that has an opportunity to go make a play can make a play. Right now with the Broncos, I just don't think that's where they're not close to that. They need at least 2 more weapons to get to that kind of point, and a couple of their other ones to really grow.
Yep.
And all right. Well, let's talk about right now. The Chiefs are 1.5 point favorites, and the over/under is 54.5. That's pretty high.
Yes.
Even though these are explosive offenses, I had to do a double take that was the score that they went with. So that would mean kind of like to get the over, the final score would have to be 30-25 kind of thing. So they're expecting these 2 high-powered offenses to go out there. If you had to bet right now, would you take over or under on that?
I think I'm going to go over, which probably bodes better for the Chiefs than it does the 49ers.
See, I'm taking the under.
Okay.
I just think the 2 defenses are being underrated. They've both shown pretty good abilities to make teams have to adjust to them. And again, those defensive lines being able to dominate, I think they can go out there and make a few plays that get the offenses off the field. There's just not, I know with the Chiefs, again, that they score a lot of points, but still, that's still asking a lot in a Super Bowl.
Yeah, it is. And they've had time to prepare as well, but I don't know, man. I just think that the Chiefs are going to be able to put up points.
All right, so then who do you got winning?
I have the Chiefs winning. That I think that Vegas is going to be right here, and I think it's going to be not as close as the indicator, the 1.5. I actually have the Chiefs winning 35-24.
You just broke my heart. Yeah, I guess I'm going to go with you. I probably do have the Chiefs winning this one. I'm probably going to go score of 31-24. I just, that offense is just so explosive. Looking at that secondary of the 49ers, even if they get them in some long distance situations, it's kind of one of those, here's how the Chiefs do it. Because they're passing so much, they are betting that they are going to be able to get 1 explosive plays out of three chances. And usually it seems to come out that way in their favor. They just have too many playmakers. And so again, you can get them into 3rd and 20. That doesn't matter to them. That's like a 3rd and 5 for every other team in the league. And that's what's so frustrating watching them, is you think that you finally got them and then they come up with something. So I think they're going to have a couple plays here that are going to confuse the 49ers and end up winning the game.
Well, that's going to wrap up today's episode of Building the Broncos, powered by Overtime Media. Today we discussed the Senior Bowl and everything that Jeff Essary saw down there. Thanks again for joining us today to talk the NFL Draft and the Denver Broncos. You can find Carl on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH and myself at Nick Kendell MHH. Make sure you head on over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. Go on over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and a comment, as your support can help us continue to bring you our Denver Bronco deep dives. You can follow the Building the Broncos podcast and all our other great audio content by subscribing to the Huddle Up podcast wherever you listen to your shows. You can follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at BTB Football Pod. For Carl and Jeff, I'm Nick, wrapping up another episode of the Building the Broncos podcast. We hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you soon. Go Broncos and go 49ers.
You've been listening to Building the Broncos. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.